Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our April show, April 21st, to Esoteric Today. This is Amber Chamberlain, the Suburban Lightworker, and we have with us today, of course, my gorgeous hostess, Satara Jules Lightbringer. Hello, Satara.
Hello, Amber.
Well, last month we got really down into it, you guys, around judgment. I hope you had a chance to take a look at that or listen to that. If you haven't, go back. It was a really good one. And it moves us into today's discussion on ego. But before I have Satara talk to us a little bit about ego, from her perspective to get us started, I want to remind you that Esoterics Today with Amber and Satara is your place for modern and ancient esoteric considerations of all kinds. Every narrative, nothing is not included. Not That's a double negative, isn't it? Everything is included relative to the energetic life. And Satara and I make it a point to give practical examples of our lives and the lives of others and experiences we've had to make the information really something that you can use in your daily life. Because we are all having third dimensional transfiguring to the fifth and beyond lifetimes right now. And you count on us to interpret some of that with you and give you a bit of a mirror. So all of that said, Satara, when I say ego, what comes to mind?
What doesn't come to mind in an awful lot, to be fair. For me, a little bit of my bugbear with the whole ego kind of conversations that go on is the fact that people seem to believe that a human doesn't need any form of ego to exist, when actually we wouldn't ever wash, dress, do anything without a modicum of ego, because that is what is also known as drive. When we talk about having the desire to do something, the drive to do something, that is actually our ego going, wow, we want some of this. That is that intelligent energy that we have within that literally drives the vehicle that is the human suit. So I can see the ego, as I kind of see a lot of things, is very multi-layered, because we need a certain level of this to operate and operate well here. At a certain point, we can get to the level of perhaps having a little bit too much when we start to expect everything to revolve around us and our wants and needs and desires, to the exclusion of other people's wants and needs and desires. So it's very, very much for me about a balancing act within it rather than eradication of it.
Satara, with all that said, because what I'm hearing you say is that ego is a humanistic structure that is a part of our psychological framework in the human being realm, human kingdom.
Yes.
That is a necessary attribute. That is the center sort of our human motivations and actions, and as the French say, raison d'être. It gives us a sense of meaning and purpose. we sort of use a self-reference, which is ego state, to then conduct our lives.
Yeah.
And then what you're also saying, I think, is that yes, there can be what I call narcissistic wounding, which is very predominant on this planet, that will skew our ego expression. In other words, we can become very selfish, self-referential to the exclusion of other.
Yes.
Or we can become self-aggrandizing to the exclusion of other. Or I think even the ego can work in the way of, we can be very self-deprecating, self-annihilating.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, very much. So if you look at the way that all of the vibrationary levels and dimensions work here, we go from the very lowest vibration up to the highest. So we literally, that fits in every single quadrant within that. There will be some modicum of our ego structure working for and against us to a certain degree.
Well, I have a question for you, because one of the things in my great anthropological look-see over those years on some of those Facebook groups, especially the larger ones, what I would run into and see is consciousness teachers from all walks of life referencing ego as in eradicating ego, kill the ego, destroy the ego has no place. And what are they really saying? Because I think that there is, you just pretty much, you know, you addressed why we must operate within an egoic framework.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you think is really being conveyed, not particularly artfully? What is it that these, that wide variety of well-meaning, I would say part of our collective, our unity conscious collective, what is it that they're really wanting to establish when they're saying that?
They're just really wanting to establish their own balance and the balance that they perceive around them. They want to bring forward that middle line of it's not too much, it's not too little, it's just the right amount. And to be fair, every pathway has got the right amount it needs at the right time anyhow. It's just perhaps what they are perceiving through their eyes as not fitting in with where they perceive it to be. So in a way, it's another form going back to the judgment of others, which is just someone looking where they're at, seeing that where they're at is perfect for them, but not quite seeing that where everybody else is perfect for them too.
And I think that's accurate, Satara, because it definitely, it definitely bridges from our discussion last time about judgment. I find those statements very judging of others, to suggest that others need to do anything, much less do anything with their ego. Usually a projection from the self that I would pick up on and think, wow, I think you're, you know, the archery term to sin.
Yes.
You know, you're missing the mark about what ego structure is and the importance it plays in the human architecture, and how beloved it is, and what a treasure and brilliance of design that makes a human being. It's not something that exists in every kind of being beyond human. It does exist in some other beings and other components of beings, but it's not. It's not predominant. Whereas
whereas here it is definitely part of the toolbox.
It's part of and it's a necessary part of the toolbox. So where else would you like to illustrate how you see ego coming up, whether from a country perspective, at the macro level, in relationship, at a community level, or larger level? Where's a good example of how you've run into ego, the issue of ego lately?
Good question. Because it's almost like it's a consciousness ripple that seems to go hand in hand at times with a different part of the world. It's almost like certain egoic qualities have to play out as a race at times. But that makes sense to me, because the way I perceive the different separation in a way that we have here just due to land mass and countries then allows for more different layers to be brought forward within just national pride, should we say.
Oh, interesting. So really you can see that ego operates sort of the expression of group ego,
Yes.
whether it's by a family or a community, that there is a wow, you're making me think of what happens when people get together and there is a group thought,
Yes.
a group ego structure.
Yeah. Which is to a certain degree brought in with how every different country has different education systems. So everybody has a certain platform level within that landmass to a certain age. So we will have all learnt exactly the same things at exactly the same time in our age development within that place. And that doesn't necessarily follow that that's anything like somebody at the same age and development in a totally different part of the world will be undergoing.
So really,
I know it's huge.
yeah, well, we're talking about consciousness then. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about, I'm kind of moving around, watching the architecture of what is individual ego, egoic structures, and I guess ego gives me a sense of my individualized beingness, and I can see how that is done at a country level or groups, and I can see how that comes across in racism. I see how that comes across in gender issues.
Yeah.
Our women are smarter than men are smarter than women. I mean, these very to me, what feel like infantile assumptions or based upon skin color, but but the human architecture of ego is a predominant feature in that, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. And in a way, the way we are educated has taught us set patterns within the programming to explore. So if you think from an incarnation point of view, we will have incarnated into a particular set of structures to be able to explore that without even realizing we're part of a different game because of where we've been placed.
So what's an example of that? Because I think we've just spent the last few minutes being rather academic. I feel there's been an academic discussion from the start on this. Put it into, maybe your own experience. I think there was something you were going to tell us about. You were telling me about before the show.
Yeah, talking about people's people.
People's people.
Yeah, totally.
What was people's people? We were dying laughing, and you guys are.
Oh, yeah, which is why we had to bring it up before the show, because otherwise you'd have got no sense out of me whatsoever.
Oh my God. But go ahead, give us an example, because I thought it was good. Okay. Because but let me set you up. Let me set it up. So what Satara is going to tell us about is relevant to our collective. It's relevant to our community of viewers and listeners. Because Satara, what we know here is we have a lot of teachers here. We have people who are Reiki providers, healing artists of all kinds, healing touch, healing art, just healing artists from every stripe, intuitive, psychic, everything. And we have all run into this kind of story that Satara is about to tell. And we've all had the collective, oh my God.
To me, it speaks of a particular archetype.
Okay.
Which is why we've all encountered this archetype. And I was very blessed not to quite be on the receiving end of this, but I was that sort of within the inner circle of a group that came together periodically of different healers and light workers. And a gentleman there, who shall remain nameless, but gave me the best giggle I think I've had in this lifetime, on one occasion came stomping into the meeting late, which was not unusual, to literally call out another female light worker there because she had, and I quote, stolen his people. Now, what he meant by, I'm going to lose it, stealing his people was that there were certain groups he held with a little, like, circle groups was one of the things that he particularly did to bring teaching through in various ways to people, different meditation techniques, different psychic techniques. He also worked as like a reader and a healer. But somebody had 3 of his people decide that they wanted to see what she could do too, and they'd gone to her instead of him. And as such, he was like an angry wasp until he calmed down because he had stolen her people. He clearly didn't realize that his people had something that we like to term free will and choice and discernment of what they wanted to do and where they wanted to do it.
Okay.
It's hilarious.
It is nuts, but it's common. It's common human error, and it's common human ego error.
Yeah, it kills me. It absolutely
but
kills
it's
me.
common. And I think that's, and you all listening and watching this conversation will identify with this. How many times have you wondered, oh, if I tell her about it, will she take my work? If I show it to her, will she steal it? As a matter of fact, I ran into that. Oh my God. Now, this was a place that I think was a wounded ego situation, a wounded, I call it wounded narcissism, because, and I want everybody to be okay with the word narcissistic. Remember, it's Narcissa, who was the Greek, was it Greek?
Yes.
Greek.
Greek, I know Narcissa as, but.
Was this the god, and who looked at that stared at his reflection? And the flower Narcissus. Okay, so remember, it's the concept that you can get so hung up. We see it in selfies. We see it in the world of plastic surgery. You know, we get so narcissistically hung up on some aspect of self, we can't see anything else, and we get very distorted. And this is an energetic distortion we're describing where ego is concerned. Right? That what Satara described is someone who had become egocentrically distorted, thinking that, and it's almost about 2 years old in the human psyche. It's like being the 2-year-old. Mine.
Yeah.
They are mine. That's mine. Give me mine. Give it back. You can't have it. Don't take it. Okay. That's really the energetic, the harmonic part of the frequency that this gentleman she's talking about. But for me, I ran into a narcissistic wounding in another beautiful light worker. And at first I took it personally, Satara. I thought, oh, she's afraid I'll take it.
Ah, right, yeah.
She talked about something when I suggested, hey, let's collaborate. You know, I really like you. Let's collaborate. She immediately went into pain and went into a pain condition in her human walk and then told me beautifully, said, hey, I've had some things stolen. And when I heard that, I felt, as an empath, right? I felt her pain, and then I felt shame as if I had stolen it. I didn't even, in other words, this is what happens to us when we're highly sensitive people. We'll go through all kinds of our own architecture. Yeah,
exactly. Because of course we're here predominantly designed in the different suits to trigger each other to greater learning and understanding. So therefore, things can trigger us that don't actually necessarily bear resemblance to what someone else is going through, but the energy of what somebody else is going through is what triggers us, because it matches or is similar to a frequency we're still working on or to work on.
Well, and that's right, because what I was aware of in that moment is that I was exploring the pain for myself as she was talking. I was feeling shame as if she thought I would do that somehow, that I could do that there was something she had that I would want. All of a sudden I went through this entire shadow of holy shit. And what I ended up with was also feeling really sad. It was an ego wounding of the individual in front of me. And what do I always say in these moments? You are me.
Yeah.
She was showing me an aspect of myself, of my pain at at my own ego structure that wants to be heard, that wants to be seen, that wants to be loved and appreciated and valued. And I want my work to be seen, loved, and valued and be meaningful to others. You do too, Sator.
Yeah, of course.
And that's our ego structure that's a human being that makes us so exquisitely darling and also prone to suffering. And I think people who are going to listen to this are going to resonate with that. I can't tell you how many people I run into. I have another friend who said, listen to the ego structure in this. She said, oh, everybody's doing it. The market, because I'm a business person as you are, and we're in the business of conscious business service providing. Oh, I feel like the market's getting really flooded. Now this is from a priestess. My point is, I don't exactly think that the market is flooded with priestesses.
No. But unless we are all goddesses and gods now.
Yeah. Yes. Market's flooded with them.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. But the point is, I'm not picking on my sister,
No. Oh, no.
What I'm bringing out is I understood her pain. It's an ego wounding that says, I am this individualized, fractal consciousness of source, and I have a mission and a job to do, but I'm afraid. My ego is feeling threatened. This natural human psychological construct that's so important is feeling nervous that I won't be able to serve, because we're a service to other souls who come to this conversation and do this work as light workers and grid workers and all the other artists who are. And we can get really triggered there. Yeah. So I don't know, can you think of other examples where you've seen that kind of fear of limitation?
I think that is quite a dominant ripple that kind of goes out, this whole feeling and programming box that we can find ourselves in that simply has a heading that says not enough. Our education system across the planet to a certain degree gives us the structure that we need to push ahead, that we need to be more than, and we always need to be more than, and that more than is for anything. It has no boundaries of what you're supposed to be doing to be able to be deemed to be successful in the 3D world. And I think that thread runs throughout everywhere pretty much. And we can all have our moments when we step back into that program almost and going, did I do enough? And that is coming from some sort of lack of consciousness.
And we are on whole, if we are embodied, which we're having a conversation in 3D, so we're embodied, we are all exploring the programming of lack and not
Yeah.
enough. And then the call to separate from one another
Yeah.
in order to hunker down over our rubies, be they
Yep.
methodologies, healing methodologies, be they, there's only but so many pairs of sneakers to go around. There really is we explore lack, we explore, and I agree with you about how it's never good enough is an injured ego structure. So,
Yeah, very much so.
yeah, I'm not
And it's one that's fed, shall we say, so that we all have had an experience of this to be able to move through it and understand it at a different level.
Well, I think
beautiful, really.
Yeah.
But testing while we're kind of in it.
While we're in it. And I think we, particularly our kind, service to other souls, arrive to the planet as such, and we very early on feel the tension between the fact that we're not service to self souls, and the messages of service to self souls is more, bigger, better, faster, more money.
Which is the perfect business model for most companies across the world.
Well, it is, and I was just listening to a piece the other day on our on the what's the nature of society based upon money? It is what is that called? See, service to other souls can't even think of things fast like this.
No, my little brain's going, okay, yeah, I get it. So understand the concept. Word, nothing.
It is capitalist.
Yeah.
And capitalistic. And absolutely now, for quite some time, modern human times, capitalistic societies thrive. And those that do not have a capitalistic society do not thrive. They fail more quickly. Because there's been the service to self modality, which is a service to self, is also very dependent on ego structure. It goes beyond your average human being's nature and requires that you build a life as a service to self soul, power over others motif. Structure is incredibly important.
Yeah, totally. I call it the them and us syndrome.
Yeah, the gulf between you and me and mine, my rubies, my people, and don't take my people, because when you go to take my people, I'm going to do something about that, and it's usually harmful. You can just almost hear it on the music sheet if we're talking about harmonics. Okay, you can see the colors of that if you're a color person. Okay, what Satara and I do in this show is bring, for you all watching and listening, various narratives and motifs, so you can find the way that it reaches you the best. But let's talk about the ego structure and service to self or power over other souls. I think we are not used to contemplating them a lot and talking freely about them anywhere, because you hear me say it, we are them, by the way.
Of course.
And in other lifetimes we were not service to other souls. It's just this lifetime we certainly are, and we have been other times, but not every lifetime. So we can talk, we're really talking about us. We don't need to feel bad about ourselves. So Tara, what is it what is it that you'd really like our listeners and viewers to understand about who the drives, the motivations, and the importance of service to self and power over others motif here on the planet today?
I find it very interesting how it works, and I have watched it at play greatly, not only by reviewing some of my past lives, shall we say, to use a 3D term, and to just really get to understand where that's kind of coming from. And most people that need to have a control over others do so usually for two main reasons. One is they haven't done the inner work in that suit to feel that they are enough. So therefore, they're coming from such a level of lack that the only way they can put the Band-Aid over the lack is to go into knee-jerk reaction and start to be some sort of control freak in whatever form they've decided that's going to be. The other aspect that I see within that is that there's been no sort of self-love has been put there. So therefore, they can't appreciate that the others that they perceive they control, own, etc., are anything but the loving beings that they should be. They're unable to see the bigger picture. It is all about them, and they have to have ABC possessions, whether that's the house, the car, the island. You know what I mean? They've got to actually overcompensate to be able to stop or certainly deflect the pain that they have. So therefore, they use other people to deflect it, whether that is belittling somebody, whether that is just being violent towards somebody, or whether that is to try to cripple someone on a mental level to just be able to look like you know better. And it plays out in all sorts of ways.
Well, really, I think the architecture of the planet has thrived on that. Thriving being not the exact word I'd like to use. It has been the predominant energetic framework on our sweet Mother Earth for a millennia. And of course, what we know about her, or our planetary body, is she's done exploring that motif, shaking us off like fleas with that. It's like a dog has fleas. It's like, and I was taught, one of my very first energetic teachers in my life in my 20s taught me that the earth, that she explored these themes of lack herself. She explored these themes of suffering herself.
Yes.
That she too, remember everybody, and this will be a new concept to some of you, but planetary bodies and stars, they have the very same geometric forms that our selves, our individualized, fractal individualized selves have too. We're all made of the same stuff. And
totally.
We're all
and, we will have all had perceived past lives as a planet. We will have through that architecture.
I love that. I love imagining that myself as a planetary body. When you do that, when you let your imagination take you to that, but Isabel taught me that story about our planetary body, and that the humans on her body are traveling the same, because this is our home planet as a human species and in the human kingdom. And so goes the planet, so goes us. So goes our water, so goes our trees, so goes us. We're all going through the same evolution and change and exploration of what we are using the words to describe ego. Um, she taught me about the fact that the earth was exploring abuse as a motif, self-rejection, lack of self-love, lack of sovereignty, lack of, lack that we're discussing here. And we just have human psychological terms with which to discuss them, and we have the word ego as a great reference point. I don't know, what would be another good example of, so the other thing I was thinking, Satara, is a service to self or power over other soul, which I'm using interchangeably because they are. They're only getting back in this lifetime that they're exploring that, what they're giving out.
Of course. It's always a two-way road.
And what in these discussions, and then you all listening and the experiences you're having, understand you are having an entirely different experience as a service to other soul. You're having a level of beauty and awareness and delicious exquisiteness that your brothers and sisters exploring service to self and power over others, they're not having it. So now that brings me to this, Satara. So what about this planetary business that we read and hear about in our collective? Explain, if you will, then, what happens with, you'll hear that, okay, there's this earth, and then there's a parallel earth, and then there's another parallel. Can you talk a little bit about the earth's expressions as it bifurcates or trilocates and beyond? Can you give a little sensibility around that while we're here?
Yeah, I think what you're sort of referring to are two separate parts. So you're looking at the earth through a parallel perspective, and you're also looking at the earth as a dimensional parallel perspective, which is two different ball games, really.
Can you talk about them?
So when people are talking at the moment about New Earth,
yeah,
and the fact that this is being built, it's never not been kind of built. It existed as part of the initial programming before life even sparked here at the very beginning, as part of the infinite architecture to be able to explore and experience through the different aspects of Earth. Now, Gaia can have many different aspects as you go through the parallel viewpoint. So we'll see what she looks like now. We think, okay, we know what she looks like now. Then we'll kind of go, oh, look, the countries are all different shapes and all over the place. Oh, that's interesting, and so on and so forth. It literally ripples out with the different changes that are needed for the different environments that we have asked to go through as the training program. Within that, so at the moment they're all at a certain level, they're all the same. So we'll say they're all 3D, different changes, different landscape, different beings, different animals, different trees, everything's different. But it's a gradual difference. So it goes from where we are now to something that's unrecognizable, but it's been steps within the parallel. So we're able to experience things slightly differently because there's going to be a slightly different twist put on things. So if we kind of move further towards what many would refer to as the New Earth and this whole utopia that they're kind of looking at compared to here, just don't look anything like each other. Totally different biosphere is going on there. You don't have the need to eat, drink, You exist of pure light because you are pure light. And everybody there is pure light because that's where we've evolved to.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Have you bumped into, on that very thing about not having to eat or drink pure light, have you bumped into that construct about breatharians?
Yes. I actually know a couple of breatharians here in the UK.
Okay. Now, relate that specific trait. And I know you guys, we were talking about ego structures, but this is a further out extrapolation about human psychological framework and what happens when you achieve a certain vibratory resonance that affects that ego structure and all psychological structures like drives, like eating and drinking and so forth, because those are easy to consume. So bringing it to you, talk to us about that. What's going on with that based on what we were just discussing?
Well, I think it might be worthwhile just briefly covering breatharians so that people really realize what a breatharian is for that name. So it's exactly what I've just said. They do not need to eat. They do not need drink. They literally just exist off the energy around them. That is all they need. It's usually a journey for people. This couple went from being brought up on a regular let's eat everything diet to gradually going towards vegetarianism, veganism, starting to include fasts in that, to go for longer and longer periods of time without the need for food. But what is most interesting with watching these two in particular has been that they've been able to find their natural balance within it. Therefore, they don't gain or lose weight. They're exactly the same as the day they stopped eating. Occasionally, if they feel that raising a toast to something in an environment that they're a part of, they will take water. But I'm talking a sip, not even talking a glassful, because they do not need to have it. It is their choice to kind of make this. Now, what I find most interesting with this is that obviously this is part of their soul agreement to remember this in this physical time now. It isn't necessarily part of the structure here. I've known many, many people who've tried to do this and can't. It has been detrimental to health for them to actually go down that route. But for whatever reason, they've decided they want to try it because they see that somebody else can do it. So therefore, if they can do it, I can do it routine, which doesn't necessarily follow here because, the whole structure of the human is governed to what we have agreed to learn as lessons. So therefore, the structure is what it is. It needs what it needs.
Okay, now, the reason I brought that up when I did in the conversation, C, is because we were talking about the parallel Earths.
Yeah.
And we are experiencing now in this, I would call it an evolutionary experience in the human species, human kingdom. We're experiencing it in gradual, which I quite prefer. Okay?
Yeah.
Whereas I like to astral travel to explore all the other stuff, have my fractal conversations with self, etc., what have you. We'll talk about more about that on other shows. And C has our own perspectives on this too. I don't necessarily have the urge to not be here and just be there. You know, that that utopia, blah, blah. Now, these breatharians, whatever you just said, is that couple that you were just describing a good example of extremely early vibratory adopters? We could just still see them in the flesh of what's here.
Pretty much, yeah. They're only really exploring that one aspect of that.
Right. It's just a note.
Exploring it and anchoring it, they are.
Right. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think what I'm saying to you as viewers and listeners is we have all kinds of humans here. And Satara might would spell that HU apostrophe MAN. And could you say to our viewers and listeners why you demarcate human that way? I think that
the initial genome was called human.
Our initial what?
Genome. So when the initial 12 strands and 12 races donated their strands of DNA to put together to create the hybridization that we know as the human, the strain of what they were creating they called a hue, and then the race that evolved from the strain became a man. Therefore it's human rather than human.
I bet most of you listening to this, although we have a lot of our 12D friends who listen, but the other people coming to listen to this and watch the show, you didn't know it, did you? But you learned it right here from Satara.
If you think we left some really pertinent things on the planet to remember this, the Sphinx at Giza, the name of the Sphinx is actually Hu. And if you look at the Sphinx, it's got the face of a man and the body of a lion.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, in a way, pertaining to the face of humans,
Mm-hmm.
but other strains are within the human. In that particular instance, you've got the lion's body, so you're looking at the felines, so the feline races, the Pashets, the Sasquatch, the Leonines, because all of those are very closely related. Although we think of like Sasquatch, Yeti, etc., they are very close relatives to the felines.
Oh, you guys, now we're really getting going, aren't we? Talking about, look at where we started this discussion, human psychological framework of ego, right? We sounded like psychotherapists here, because that's our background. But counseling backgrounds.
You know, as I say, that's a really good example, and it's like there's loads of those. We go into like ancient Sumeria and we look at the Lamassu. The Lamassu has got the face of the human, male face, beard even on the Lamassu, but the body is a bull.
Dudes, this is going deep. I love that.
You know, and they're here. We've left the clues throughout the timelines to just kind of go, that looks weird. I wonder why it looks weird. It's just
it triggers
a little bit of a story.
It triggers.
Yeah, and that's not saying that the people necessarily look that way that we're trying to talk about, but it was such a simple way of doing architecture to go, look what's within your coding.
The hidden in plain sight.
Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
Listen, we're talking about ego, and I have one more that I am dying to ask you about and to talk about. Oh, yes, I'm dying to do it.
Okay.
You're going to be like, girl, she did not go here. I'm going here. The 144,000 light warriors of light. The 144. Let's get this. Can we please get this off our chest? Can we get it?
We can indeed. We've just briefly spoken about the 12 strands of DNA that makes up the human, that came through what we would see as the 12 main master races, although I don't like the word master particularly, that decided to get together and what could they possibly merge together to create perfection. And each one of them believed that a strand of their particular species had perfected something. So therefore, whether that was speech, whether that was healing, whether that was brain function, whatever, it was all spliced together basically and put together, created, and the human species was created. But when we look at what we know here now about DNA, we see that actually our DNA is formed in strands that number 12, which basically still echoes back to the original 12 donors, shall we say? Although that's kind of not working quite that way at the moment because of the way the breeding program has gone on across time. It has amplified some of the traits and negated some of the others. So it's a little bit out of whack, shall we say. This is why we can look at each other at times and we can see what their dominant trait is or dominant DNA is, because we can see how that person is perhaps operating, whether that is just how they walk, whether that is just how they speak, how they do their maths, whatever. We will see what the dominant trait can be. So that is still rippling through within this programming. What the 144 refers to are the advances in DNA that are possible. DNA strands here work in blocks of 12. However, when all 12 strands are like all firing nicely and balancing and doing exactly what they should do, because work has been done on the different fractal aspects that can assist with turning on that DNA, that then starts to boost up. And as soon as the 12 come online, boom, we move to 24. And so on and so forth until we get to 144. And the 144 magical number refers to the embodiment of all of the DNA in perfect balance.
So what we will see from an egoic standpoint on a lot of these chat groups and these Facebook groups and these other environments is a freakish level of ego, of human ego construct.
Yeah.
Which says that I am one of the 144 souls or 144,000 and you just knew that wasn't exactly right.
Yeah, we all are. We all are everything. We have always all been everything, and we will always be everything.
Right. So I love that we took you through that pace of discussion. Another way I'm going to offer it is the 12 tribes of Israel. There are always narratives to get at this 12-strand DNA story.
Yeah.
The 12
will run through every single religious concept available.
You're going to find 12. There's also, if you take a look at sort of the monad, when you're talking about causal body and all the bodies, you will see the molecular structures, the 12 structures, and how they descend, or should I say, not devolve, but involution, and how they then rise or evolve or ascend. Now you're starting to get clues as to this construct of ascension that you hear about ubiquitously in our community, right? We're talking about DNA structures, really subatomic particulate structures.
Yeah.
And there's various spiral or toroidal spin. I'm using clues and I'm dropping breadcrumbs here across.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
I'm going to go really basic here, and I don't know if you get the same in the US with things, but I'm going to talk eggs. When we buy eggs here, they're all in dozens, aren't they?
Yes.
If you go mad, you get a half dozen. They're never called 6, they're a half dozen.
Half dozen.
Yeah. The 144 within the egg is called a gross.
Yes.
12's 144. old measure is a gross.
Oh,
Gross at the time meant the largest possible denomination.
yes.
So how perfect is that when it tells you that to get to 144, you've made it
In plain sight.
in plain sight? And it's perfect that they've used the egg, because what does the egg represent?
The egg of life.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man, is this getting
That
good?
is your spliced DNA within a shell.
Jeez, this is so good.
So yeah, so you know that everybody who has got dominant avian strands will be going yes, and everybody who's got dominant reptilian strands will be going yes, because the eggs are still present.
Because the eggs are still present. And we'll be talking
You know,
about
outer rather than inner, shall we say?
right. We'll be talking more, I think, Satara and our guests and with guests as they come too. But we'll be talking more here on this show about our planetary species beginnings via this esoteric model, as described with the DNA, the 12 contributors, and so forth. I think being able to be conversant, and not weird.
Oh, I don't know. I quite like weird.
I like weird too. In other words, it's like, but it's conversantly weird, as opposed to, I think a lot of times these discussions are cloaked in secrecy, or there's some, the ego, the human ego likes to feel like there's a service to self component and a power over other components that likes to say this is a secret. And you can't come into our secret society and our secret club unless you do like pay a whole lot of money, or, you know.
Or learn the handshake. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Do these weird. Yeah, to me, that crap's weird.
Yeah. Because it's like, as we've just said, it's all in plain sight.
It's all in plain sight, and it's here for everyone.
It's waving at us.
It's like, hello. Yeah, and I think that's where I think we're going in this show that makes this sort of a very special conversation. And we're coming to the end of our time together to not go on too long. But I think that you all as listeners are getting, and viewers are getting, a real idea of what happens on Esoteric Today with myself, Amber Chamberlain, and Satara Light Jewel Springer. Satara.
Light Brinker's good.
I cannot say it all, apparently. I've talked myself out. But it gives you a taste of who we are, what we do, how we talk to clients, and how we, and the mission that we have, I think. You just went all over there. But listen, everyone, much love. I think we had a really good discussion on what is ego. Last month was what is really judgment from an esoteric and energetic standpoint. And look at all the beautiful places these discussions take us, Satara.
Yeah, totally. Because it's just nice to just try and be as open as possible, and to just work as infinitely as possible without having to be part of the boxes, which my cat is obviously, chiming in about.
Cat has definitely enjoyed the conversation today.
He has indeed. I know my place. I am just a cat mat.
You're a cat mat. Please everyone enjoy this show and share us with your friends. Bring people to the conversation, and have them listen into these very, I think, unusual but delightful and joy-filled conversations on these really highly expanded topics. So Tara, much love. We will do this again next month, and be looking for things in between from us as time goes by. We're going to just get more content going. So you're finding us on YouTube, and you're finding us on SoundCloud, and we're grateful to have you with us. Much love, everyone. Thank you.
Very much so. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next month. Bye.
Bye.